Hello everyone, I'm Milo and welcome to my town. Welcome to this new type of video series I'd like to call the Visual Novel Corner. I'm a fan of visual novels. Actually, a visual novel series is among my top 3 gaming franchises, that being the Ace Attorney series. I'm definitely not the best visual novel buff out there, unlike some people I know, but I do enjoy these types of games, if we can call them like that. Anyway, I decided to start this new segment on the channel to talk about some of the titles in this genre that I enjoy, especially to bring to light some that might be a bit underappreciated. In case you are not aware, visual novels are video games that mostly focus on a narrative experience. Usually, they don't have too much of a gameplay aspect. Rather, most of what you do is read the story as it's presented to you. Depending on the game itself, you might be able to do some sort of interactions, but overall they tend to be linear experiences. The genre is clearly not something for everyone. I wouldn't expect someone who mainly fancies, say, action games, to enjoy these types of games right off the bat. You could say that for the most part, they are interactive books, and you wouldn't be wrong. Now, as to how each individual VN approaches having its own unique thing, it's different. Usually, a lot of them involve the making of choices, which might in some way influence the story, some more than others. Other VNs might have a unique type of element that complements them. It's hard to describe it on a broad approach, as there can be the most simple ones, or it's really just a set story, some that might take on alternate endings, or some that mix even more elements into the game to make it a unique experience. Anyway, that's a simple introduction to visual novels. I wanted to get it out there before delving into the main topic of this video. As you saw from the title, today I've got to talk about Root Letter Last Answer. Root Letter is a visual novel cataloged as an adventure and detective mystery game, developed and published by Kadokawa Games. The game was first released in 2016, but an enhanced version given the new title of Root Letter Last Answer was announced and released in 2018. By 2019, the game was now localized and available in many regions and platforms. The main differences between the original and the new version were the inclusion of a new drama mode, some enhancements to quality of life within the game, and a new set of ending scenarios to complement the story. I'll talk more in detail about this later on. The game begins when the protagonist, a Tokyo resident in his studies, finds some letters he used to exchange 15 years back with Aya Fumino, a girl from Matsue, a city located in the prefecture of Shimane. As he looks at them and reminisces about the past while they both wear pen pals, he discovers an additional letter, one he doesn't recall reading before. This letter contains a very cryptic message, and our protagonist decides to head to Matsue in hopes to find his correspondent and hopefully learn exactly what that was all about, while he uncovers the secrets of whatever had happened 15 years back, when she suddenly stopped replying to his letters. The setting is very interesting in my opinion. It sets a tense atmosphere and a clear goal. The only clues you have to go on are the 10 letters you exchanged with Aya back in the days, and from them you'll have to try and figure out the best approach to find out her current whereabouts. Of course, I'll try not to delve too deep into the actual story, but that's the basic premise. The way this game works actually reminds me a lot about Ace Attorney, the series I mentioned before that is on my top of all time favorite gaming franchises, so that made me enjoy the game more. You have a set of actions you can do in between advancing the story segments. First up is Move, which simply lets you visit the different locations throughout the game. As the game progresses, you visit more of the city and the places remain open for the most part for you to go to them, though you can't do too much on them unless the story is set to continue to a specific place. Ask is used to talk to the characters that might be in the same area as you. You'll have to use it to advance the story on some occasions. Often, there are some side dialogues that, while not progressing the story, can let you in on some additional details from the character you're speaking to. Check is used to examine the environment. You can pinpoint specific sections of the backgrounds of the places you visit. Almost every location in the game has 2 or more spots of interest to check, so for someone like me that likes to see every little text hidden in these types of games is a cool extra. Using check will often be the key to moving on to the story at times. The inventory option allows you to show some of the items you've collected to the characters you may find. Most of the times, this feature is exclusive to story progression. There are a couple of instances that I could find where an optional item may be shown to some characters and they would actually have responses to them. In the Ace Attorney games, doing something like this is actually pretty prevalent. While it was a bit disappointing to not see so many of these fun extra options, I get that it might not always make sense to have them. With Think, you can get a hint on where to go next. The game is not incredibly ambiguous in its presentation, but if you aren't sure on where to continue at some point, then you can use it. There are also some moments in the game where thinking is the way forward as well. The guidebook is an item you get early on in the game. It mainly serves as a way to get information on the actual locations you visit throughout the game. And yes, at times you also will need to consult it to move on ahead. The final menu option is the smartphone. It is simply your main option menu. You can save, reload, adjust the settings, or go back to the main menu. Simple stuff. These are the main ways you'll be going through the game. As I mentioned, the actions are very reminiscent of the Ace Attorney games, and the similarities don't stop there, as there is an additional gameplay style where most of these come together at once, called the investigation phases. Since your clues to finding Aya Fumino are mainly the letters you got from her way back, the best bet our protagonist has is to try and locate the classmates she often talked about in her letters. You'll have to pursue the clues you can find, and eventually you'll start to locate them. But something is off, as they refuse to talk about Aya. After having gathered enough evidence throughout your travels, you'll have to confront them in the investigation phase. In this mode, the game will shift into something a bit similar to the trials on the Ace Attorney franchise. You'll be confronting the classmates face to face and try to get the truth out of them. You'll have to start questioning and dig out the information out of them by asking the right questions at the right time, by either talking about a topic or presenting the appropriate items. These fates will have some envelopes that serve as a sort of life system. If you fail enough times, you'll have to restart the section all over. Unlike in Ace Attorney games where a similar life system exists, here you do have access to the think option, which can point you in the right direction on what you might need to do next. I think mainly you'll need the help on which topic to begin with, as you'll have plenty of options to choose from. Thinking should let you start on the right track. If you actually can get to find what topic of item might be appropriate next, thinking might just be the task you need to proceed on with the line of questioning. There is also an additional let's say function, which is called max mode. Honestly, this is simply some sections where you'll have to answer to a character and you'll have different reply levels that go from a more toned down to a more intense response. One of the options presented is the correct one, so it's simply identifying which is the right statement to use. Though you lose nothing if you get it wrong, you simply get to retry. Well, anyway, those are just the ways you'll be, quote-unquote, playing the game. I don't want to go deep into the story, as I'd rather have you all experience it instead. As I mentioned before, and from the way the story progresses, the game is supposed to be a mystery and detective game. And it is true. After all, you are trying to uncover a mystery that took place in the past and digging for clues regarding it. Usually, a story with this kind of characteristics will often be pretty serious or tense, but Root Letter manages to be presented mostly in a calm and mellow tone. This is especially exemplified by the main theme of the game, which you've been listening to for most of the video. Believe it or not, this song actually plays for roughly 70% of the game. It's everywhere, but it has such a calm tone, it just goes along with the laid-back tone of the story, and it never got old while playing the game. You are trying to uncover some mystery, but there isn't that much of a rush going on, so you can take the time and take it all in, especially since the protagonist is pretty much visiting this foreign city to him and getting to know it in and out. The game does feature some more songs that are pretty solid, and when the mood needs to change to a more serious atmosphere, it makes the switch to feel like it. But overall, as you are visiting this unknown town, you'll be having the serene theme in the background. Now, something that has lately been evident with the footage on screen so far is the presence of real actors and real life settings for the backgrounds. This is the drama mode I mentioned earlier. As an addition to Last Answer, the entire game can be played in this style now. The original release only had drawn illustrations for its characters and backgrounds. I'll admit I'm not too familiar with them since I mainly played using the drama mode. This was actually the main point that made me both notice and try out this game. And especially when you compare the illustrations against the real-life counterparts, you really do get how accurately they nailed everything. For the original illustrations, they likely had the reference material of the real places as they conveyed them into their drawings, so looking at the real deal is actually very impressive, but it's also cool to see the same setting you may actually get to meet in real life if you were to go there. This goes as well for the characters. Since for Last Answer they likely had to find a cast that resembled the people they had originally created, and I can say that they nailed it perfectly. I might be a bit biased here, as another visual novel that I will likely talk about in the future is also presented with real life actors, and I actually adore that game. So finding something similar to it made me excited, and that's why I enjoy this game so much. Having the real settings is almost like watching an interactive movie, one where the pace goes as fast as you want it to. Of course, if it's not your cup of tea, you can simply switch to the classic mode and play with the drawn illustrations. I get that some might not care or like this so much, but this feature ended up being one of my most enjoyable aspects from the game, and I do praise it for it. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the game is also fully voice acted, besides the protagonist, who purposely goes mute to try and make the player portray them. The voices were on the original release, so they aren't actually the same actors you see on screen talking. However, they both feel so natural together, you would probably assume the characters you see do have the voices you hear from them. The voices are in Japanese and the performance is very good. It is another point that brings enjoyment while you play. Coming back to the story, its structure has an additional layer to it. At the beginning of each of the chapters, you'll be reading the old letters you had exchanged with Aya, and reminisce about the answers you wrote back. You'll get to select some of the answers to her questions, and in there, depending on your choices, the game will actually split up into one of several endings. I was actually not expecting something like this while I played, so it was a grateful surprise. There are 2 bad endings, a weird ending, and a neutral one. Each one depends on the answers you give throughout the game. These endings are supposed to be an alternative way to end the story, alternate timelines, if you will. To be honest, the bad and weird endings are pretty bizarre and heavily change the tone of the story, but I still think they are enjoyable. The neutral ending sticks more to a regular story. They all simply changed some of the facts that are presented during the ending, depending on the route that was selected, and arriving at a slightly different conclusions. Once you've completed any of the endings once, the true ending will be unlocked. To get it, a new set of answers will be added to the letters, so you'll need to replay the game once again and select them, as well as any choices for the other alternate endings. Thankfully, replaying the game is very easy, as a skip chapter function gets added to the smartphone once you've cleared your first ending. All you need to do is select your letter answers at the beginning of a chapter, and then you can quickly skip to the next, where the same will happen. On each of the endings, only the last 2 chapters are different, and you'll know you're on a new route if the chapter name is something you don't recognize. It takes less than 10 minutes to get to the point where you'll start seeing the new story branch, so it's worth seeing all of the routes. Of course, I'd recommend you see all of the other endings before chasing the true one. An additional improvement that Last Answer has is allowing you to skip chapter 8. For some reason, on the original version you couldn't do this, and it's weird considering your answers are already set when this chapter begins, so it was just a hassle to do all of the actions of progression through this chapter, knowing there isn't any new information for you. So, another plus to this version. Finally, after you have cleared all of the routes, a new extra mode unlocks. These are epilogues to each of the existing routes of the game, except the neutral ending. I guess that one remains how it ends. These are new additions to Last Answer, a bit of an extra story to conclude each of the ending routes, but they are a bit hit or miss. For starters, and I'll keep it vague to minimize spoilers, but not all of the main characters end up being featured in them. I wasn't really able to find information on this, but I just assumed they could not get all of the original voice actors to come back and record additional lines for these scenarios, so some of the characters that are relevant in the game are mostly omitted out of the epilogues, and this is especially annoying for the additional story after the true ending. In addition, at least on the Steam version, which is the one I played, these have a lot of typos and errors. The main game has a couple of instances of badly formatted text boxes or slight mistakes on the text, though nothing too terrible. I was still able to understand what it said on each of said instances. But these extra stories just have way more problems than anywhere else in the game. And it's a bit unprofessional the fact that years after the game was released, these were not properly fixed. At this point, it's unlikely to happen. I'd say that the overall quality of the epilogues is fine. Unfortunately, the one for the true ending suffers the most, and it's mainly due to the voice acting problem. I feel like if they simply decided to have these extras go unvoiced, they could have come up with something better to present in these stories. I purposely kept the details vague so you can find out on your own what I mean, but I'll admit that I was a bit disappointed due to the limitants they ended up having. I suppose I'll mention another gripe I have with the game. This is mainly a personal issue, but often visual novels have ways to counter this. I'm the kind of person that tries to get the most out of a game. And when talking about VNs, that means getting to see every little bit of text the game might hide somewhere. So I often like to see all of the conversation options and things like that. The problem is that the way this game is built doesn't let you reload your save file if you accidentally selected the dialogue that progresses a story segment, and that will make an optional dialogue disappear. Whenever this happened, I had to restart the game, mainly because I didn't want to go too much ahead before reloading manually, and this was especially an issue for me near the endings of the game. A lot of VNs actually allow you to mostly save anywhere, so reloading for a similar situation is easy, but not so much here. Anyway, that's just a personal thing that I thought I'd at least mention. Well, after everything that I've said so far, that is pretty much root letter last answer. The game is clearly a bit of a marketing tool for the city of Matsue, but I will admit that they do a good job showing you parts of the city that might actually make you go and visit. I know I probably would. I found a unique take on the mystery theme, but with a calm tone to be really soothing and enjoyable. It really did make me get into the mind of the main character of trying to discover what he went for, while at the same time enjoying his time in the city unknown to him. Root Letter Last Answer is currently available on Steam, the Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation 4. I suppose it should be able to be played on the 5 as well. The game is priced at $30 which I may admit may be a bit too much. Usually with these types of games, it's a bit hard to agree on a price tag, especially when you are an outsider to the genre. The good thing is that I've often seen it go on sale. On Steam, it often goes at 70% or more of a discount, and I personally bought it when it was at 87% off. I paid little under $2 after converting to my currency. On consoles, I doubt it will go so low, but at the moment of writing the script, I can see it's discounted down to $8 on the Switch, and on PlayStation it often goes down to that price as well. If you are not familiar with the visual novel genre, but found what you heard interesting and would like to give this game a shot, then try to get it whenever it goes on sale. I decided to make this video mainly because I don't see too much coverage for this game, and I genuinely believe it's an enjoyable story, so hopefully if my words manage to move you, this game can be more out there in the public. They did make a spiritual sequel to Root Letter, called Root Film. From what I understand, they are not related, but they work similarly. It was first released in Japan in 2020, and just under a year ago it was localized into English in March 2021. For now, the game is only available on Switch and PlayStation 4, so I kind of want to wait to see if it comes to Steam, whether it's a regular version or if they gave it the Last Answer treatment with a real-life cast. I may end up picking it up for Switch, but it'll have to be for a later date. Anyways, this was the first episode of the Visual Novel Corner. Since I have some recommendations on the genre, I hope to make more videos like this in the future. I really want to talk about the other live-action cast VN that I referred to in this video. It'll likely be my next episode, so make sure to stick around if you don't want to miss that. If you end up playing this game, please do let me know in the comments. I also uploaded a video about some bonus scenarios that are hidden within this game, so maybe check that video out after you played it. I hope you enjoyed the video and got to hear about this game I enjoy. Hopefully you can join me in the future in another topic. Don't forget, you'll always be welcome in my town. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.